Hi, and welcome to my week 7 in review video. So, I want to thank you. In your Focus Child reports, you introduced me to two Aidens, an Arlo, Christopher, Josiah, Sebastian, Sagan, Simon, Tony, Tyler, Amaya, Chloe, Emma, Isabella, Maya, Sally, and Woodsy. So I look forward to getting to know these children with you and through you this semester. For your interview papers, 15 people interviewed teachers or professionals in early childhood or early childhood special ed. Those included social workers, guidance counselors, teachers, and paraprofessionals. Someone even interviewed their mom, which I have to say I loved that. And one person interviewed a family who has a child with a disability. Um, and that was a profound experience for them. During those interviews, people talked about lots of issues in the special education system as well as opportunities. And some of those include families as a challenge, resources, and those resources included not enough money, not enough time, the tools aren't there. There's a lot of paperwork. There's not enough support. Um, there's not enough professional development, and there's not enough services. There's not enough providers, and that children are denied services, even if they need them. People talked about evaluations being a snapshot in of one moment in time, and this is my words, that evals don't always adequately capture a child's functioning, and that's true. Evaluations are a snapshot of one moment in time, and so they don't always adequately capture a child's functioning. A child can have a really great day, or a child can have a not so great day, and that can impact the results of an evaluation, right? If a child gets services. One thing we haven't talked about is eligibility, and some people talked about that in their papers. And so for CPSE and CSE, a child has to have what's considered a 50% developmental delay in one area or 25% delay in two or more areas in order to qualify for services. So, what exactly does that mean? If a child's 3 years old, they have to be functioning for a 50% delay. That would be, they have to be functioning at the equivalent of 1.5 years of age in one area. Um, if it's two or more areas, it would be a 25% delay, which means they would be functioning a little about a year at about a 2-year-old level into domains of development. And that continues through uh, CPSE for children 3 to 5, and then for CSE. So remember, CSE, Committee on Special Education, focuses on academics. It doesn't look at developmental domains. It doesn't look at development as much as it looks at academics. So that's something to think about. So how a child functions in math, science, social studies, English, as well as some things like handwriting, physical therapy, those as speech that support a child's academic functioning. Um, so those are basically eligibility requirements. Early intervention eligibility requirements are pretty much the same. But it comes down to numbers and performance on assessments, really. And I want to take a minute to talk about MTSS because many people said, "Oh, my program uses MTSS. We focus on individualized instruction." So that's not really MTSS. So MTSS involves having a evidence-based curriculum, which means the curriculum has been researched. It's not developed on a school level. It's typically a curriculum that has been purchased by the program. So it's one that you buy, that you bring in, that has a book to go with it for the teacher to follow with lessons. And it also has an assessment system. And the first step in implementing this curriculum is to deliver a universal screening. So all children are assessed to see their functioning in relation to this curriculum. That's the very first step of an MTSS program. Then the teacher delivers the curriculum. And this is implements the curriculum with fidelity. So that means they follow the curriculum. They follow the lessons in the book. And they pretty much, the goal is to follow them as the book, the teacher's guide, indicates, because they want to ensure that the children are learning what the curriculum indicates. Then, after about 4 to 6 weeks, there's an assessment, and the assessment is from the curriculum to see how the children are performing. What have they learned based on the curriculum, based on the information the teacher is given from the curriculum? And I don't necessarily mean like that the teacher has stood there and lectured to the 3-year-olds, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be that, but the materials that the teacher has set up, the planning comes from the curriculum. So the activities, the books, everything is based on the curriculum and what the curriculum has instructed the teacher to do. Okay, so 4 to 6 weeks, the books that are read, the, questions, the centers, everything's based on the curriculum. And maybe questions teachers ask at the centers, it's based on the curriculum. 4 to 6 weeks, there'll be an assessment to see the children's progress. And this is where the children and when the children are divided into tiers. So you'll have the results of the assessment. And this is when we talk about data-driven instruction. And the teachers will come together often and look at the results. And so we see there's a group of children who've made progress. They're doing well. Everything's fine. They just keep going. Okay. And we continue delivering the curriculum and everything's fine. And then we'll have a group of students who show that, you know what, they need a little extra support. They didn't master all the skills that were intended by the curriculum. Okay, so all of the skills weren't mastered. There were some areas they struggled. It might be a group of 6 students or so. So they'll be in what we call tier one. So they'll have a teacher work with them with their small group, tier one. Okay. Then we keep diving in the data and we see, oh, there's another group of students and they have some more skills that they struggled with. And maybe it's a group of about 3 students. And or it might be more than 3. It might be, 8 students. But we're going to divide them into smaller groups because they showed that they're struggling more with the content. So they need a smaller group. So remember, tier one, it's a group of, say, 6 students. Okay. The second tier, tier two, they're showing that they have more things they did not master. They're struggling with more, so they need a smaller group. So maybe they're in groups of three. Okay. And then we have another group, sort of the top of the pyramid, and we see that these children, oh, wow, on the assessments, they need a lot more support with the curriculum. So they're really struggling. And we need to provide a lot of support for them. So we're going to offer one-on-one support, one adult to one student. Now there might be 5 or 6 children who fall into that category, but we're going to when an adult works with them, the adult works with them one child, one adult, okay, to make sure that they're meeting their learning needs. And the goal of an MTSS is to prevent referrals to special education. So teachers, staff will work with children in these groups. Tier 1, groups of say 6, Tier 2, groups of say 3, Tier 1, one-on-one. Um, I think I just reversed that. Tier 1, groups of 6, Tier 2, groups of 3, and Tier 3, groups of one-on-one, and they'll work with them until they feel the students have mastered what they needed to master, and then they'll continue the curriculum. And meanwhile, the other children are continuing the curriculum, right? The curriculum is being taught with what we call fidelity, which means the teacher is following the lesson plan in the teacher's guide, as it's as instructed. And then about 6 weeks, again, another assessment. And using the information from that assessment, we go through the process of seeing which students need additional support. And if there's students who are struggling in some areas, we try to, when they're struggling some, we put them in tier 1, and that might be a group of 6 who work with one adult. Students who are struggling some more, and we put them in tier 2, and maybe they're groups of 3. And then students who are struggling a lot, and the data shows they're not really getting concepts, they're going to be in tier 1, tier 3, and that's one-on-one. So, and how do we figure out the groups? We look at the data. What area is the student struggling? Where is the student having a hard time? And that's where we target our instruction. And that's why it was called response to intervention, which it's now morphed into STSS. And so that's the multiple tiers of support. And it's designed again to prevent referrals to special education by targeting intervention and targeting support for students. And so we're really looking at data, constantly looking at data to see which students need support where and how we can offer them support. And so if we don't have that evidence-based curriculum, if we don't have those ongoing assessments, and those assessments are not just documentation and observations, these are tests that come from the curriculum, then it's not, and then we don't have these small groups based on the children's functioning in each of these areas, then we don't have an MTSS. MTSS is typically offered in ELA or English classes, or it's called different things in different programs. But your reading, your literacy, your writing, it's typically offered in that program. It's typically offered in math, sometimes science, and often social, emotional, and behavior learning. has MTSS involved. So I hope that clarifies MTSS. I hope everybody has a great week, and I look forward to seeing you in week 8. Be well.